Hey everybody, Sujan Patel here, one of the founders of Mailshake, the CEO. I got Jeff Torbeck here, a seasoned sales VP, coming in from Nashville, Tennessee, Gun.io. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to talk to you. So you've been a VP of sales at, I believe, 3 or 4 different organizations now. I'm sure you've seen the good, bad, ugly of orgs. But I think 2023 is a really interesting year, very different than I think people expected. Buying, selling, it's all different. Going into 2024, what do you think is in modern day, the appropriate way to build and scale a sales team? And that's a loaded question. We could break it down over time.
Yeah, I think like the simple answer or like the high level answer, the easiest answer is what worked before won't work going forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I look at that is the old school way to build teams was just activity, throw as much stuff at the wall. And if we have as many customer conversations as we can, then we're going to have success. And so people built massive SDR orgs and massive sales orgs. And it was just like revenue at all costs, right? Because the way people used to go through, or companies used to go through VC funding was we get Series A, we race like hell to a revenue number so that before we run out of money so that we can raise Series B and then to keep going. And what people learned in 2023, they got a little taste of this definitely like in 2020 when COVID hit, but really in 2023 is that strategy is not like long lasting. It's not going to be sustainable as they go through there. And it's not about like just raising money wins. What we're seeing, especially from the VC world and things like that today, is they care about efficiency and then a path to profitability, but more so the efficiency, right? Like not all companies have to be profitable. And I think a lot of people don't understand most companies aren't profitable, right? That's the goal, but like you have to spend money to make money typically. And that's why there's funding and things like that. But I think the change that we're going to have to see in 2024 is how do you build really efficient teams? And it's going to rely on making data-driven decisions and actually thinking about like, okay, we took these bets last year. It didn't work. Why? Why didn't they work? Do we really understand why it didn't work? And then are we making the changes based off the actual data versus making these changes off of, well, it feels good, or this is what I've done at a previous company, or let's just throw more people at it because we have, an underperforming team. So if we double the size, we should double the revenue at the same kind of like underperforming level. And that doesn't add up as they go through there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the inefficiencies, frankly, bluntly, like dead weight and brute force has been hidden and like just bad reps have just been hidden under growth, right? Mm-hmm. Now that growth is harder to achieve or almost gone for a lot of companies. You're like, hold on, let me look under there. Oh yeah, like we're doing this is bad. We look at, I was looking at the same thing. My background's in marketing, and when I look back at, what, like our marketing strategy over the last 2 years, I'm like, hold on, why are we doing this, that, the other? We could have just done a better job from the beginning. Again, data-driven decisions. Or like, I always look at this as like, is it a bad strategy or is it bad execution? And I always find the crux of it is usually on the like strategy part, but it kind of could work if you brute force the execution, right? But anyways, so you're new at Gun. You're building a team, presumably, or you're leading a team. What do you look for in folks, right? Like again, going in with this change of the industry and buying and selling being different.
Yeah, I think like the best leaders out there go into an organization and they look at like what's been done, how they've been done, and more importantly, like why is it being done this way? Right. And so I'm spending a lot of the time asking a lot of questions of why do we do it? Why do we call it this way? Why is our process this way? Mainly to figure out, has there been thought that's been put into it? Right. I've talked to a lot of other leaders too, as they grow things. And it's like, you want to understand, like, why did they do it this way? Right. And if it worked, great. To your point about like strategy versus execution, did they brute force it and just happen to work? But does that work long term? So I think you need to like spend the time to dive into that. And then it's really assessing the talent that you have. And do you have the right people for the direction that you want to go. Like a lot of companies right now are doing annual planning for 2024. So like, do you have the right, talent that can execute your vision or execute the strategy that you're going to have, right? And I always think, the best salespeople have the most EQ. Can they read a room when things are going array? Can they stop and make pivots during the call, right? Because nobody wants to be sold things. Not everybody loves being on a sales call, and I always kind of confirm that by when you go to an event or a conference or a meetup or like a nice dinner that somebody throws for you or something like that, the conversations that organically happen at those are amazing. And you learn so much about people's business. But you get them on a sales call for 30 minutes and they really are closed up because they're just waiting for you to like push them to buy something. And so it's about having the EQ to really understand about like, how do you engage these people in a conversation so you can really understand, should I be spending the time on this? Because I think we've gone back to this idea of reps just want to talk to everybody versus like, are the reps spending the time? Are they appreciating their time? And are they spending the time with the right clients that they need to be there? And so that's how I look at things as you start to build it. Really, like, are we doing the right things? Are we putting the right effort in the right places? And then going back to kind of your idea of like the execution, what have we tried? And then really try to use data to understand, like, did we just make it work and that wasn't a good strategy, but it worked out? Or can we put a better strategy in for something similar that's going to give us long-term success as we go through there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like lead qualification and really data-driven decisions is coming back, given that we're not in the cycle of everyone's buying, right? The last couple of years have been like, post-COVID, it was like, everyone's buying, so you could probably sell to almost everyone, right? It's like almost everybody. So like, it was less of like, I felt like it was less of pick the right deals to more time to respond and get the money while it's coming in. And now it's like, well, not everyone should be buying, right? Because I think you might get I find this in deals is like X decision maker wants it. They go down the funnel and they realize, actually, I don't need this, right? Or like, I don't have the budget for this, or actually, we're going to put this to next year, and something changed in that like 30, 60, 90 day buying cycle. Are you seeing things change mid-cycle in the last 12 to 18 months?
100%. And I think you nailed it, right? Like, people aren't buying like they were buying. Like post COVID, like I remember 2020 when I first started at Bets and everybody went remote and it was weird for us. So like we were trying to find things that like, what can we buy that like tracks activity better or gets people together? Like, I think companies really built these crazy sales stacks, and now they're like, holy cow, we have a lot of the things that do similar things. And so I think selling going forward, they realized that didn't bring the results that they hoped, right? So they have these overinflated tech stacks, and we're seeing a lot of consolidation through there. I think we'll still see a lot of consolidation of tools. Like, will bigger companies buy a lot of the stuff? Like lead companies coming together will, a company like Outreach buy a bunch of different tools to go compete with Gong, because that's kind of what they seem like they're trying to do as they go through there. But from a buyer's perspective, I think what reps and what sales teams need to think about today is you're always going to have somebody or another organization that does something similar to you. What are your true differentiators, and why should that client be talking to you? And to your point about like halfway through the cycle, if you haven't done good discovery at the beginning, like you should be able to tell a client pretty early in the cycle, like, I think this is a fit because of X and Y, or it's not a fit because of, X and Y. And if it is a fit, you still hang on to those things. So if you do get this like buyer change in the middle of the cycle, it's like, okay, let's back up and go back to like why we started this conversation. You're solving X and Y. If that's changed, let's talk about that, because then like, this might not be a fit right now. And I think reps are scared to do that today, mainly because like there aren't pipelines out there like there used to be, right? Like we all know reps just love having stuff in their pipeline so that they like feel like, hey, if I close 30% of this, but like I'd rather see reps with lower pipeline that's actually going to close the actual 30% versus like have some massively inflated pipeline that they close 10% of because they should have closed deals out a long time ago. I think that's where we're getting to, right? It goes back to like the efficiency metrics of like, it's not that we need to be in more deals. We just need to be in the right deals. And the hard part is identifying, especially depending on the industry and stuff that you're in, what are the right deals, and have you taken the time to really understand the deals that you won recently? Why did we actually win those? Like, was the rep really that good? Were they in a true buying cycle and we caught them at the right time? Or did we just sell them something they didn't need because they had money to spend? Like, those are three very different outcomes. And two of those can be built upon. The third one of like, they just had money to spend. Like, that's not a strategy that like, I want to like, forecast up to the board that like, hey, Q3 and Q4, this is the strategy we're going to go into and it's going to work.
Yeah. Well, I think that the issue with going after that was very valid. I think the disqualification of people is so important. Going back to like, so sales, what are you selling? It's a product or a service.
Mm-hmm.
If the customer is not consuming or utilizing that, ultimately it's revenue lost down the road, right? And so, I call that like a leaky bucket. So no matter how much you fill a leaky bucket, you're going to have to keep filling it up, meaning what that means is at some point, the board, the CEO, the management team is going to question, well, are we just spending a lot of money, CAC, to acquire a customer that we're going to lose and have to refill the bucket paying commissions? And so I think as a early in your sales career or sales rep, it's really hard to see like why you should not be focusing on the wrong deals. But if a sales leader, like you've been through it, like, oh yeah, we had this growth, but actually turns out X% of people weren't using the platform at churn risk from day one. Well, that's going to disappear at some point, Yeah. I think some point is here. Right? Yeah. Everyone's evaluating your tools.
Yeah, I think the disqualification is dead on, right? Like, we need to be willing to walk away from deals. Like, countless one-on-ones with reps about how they're so disappointed that this deal didn't close, and they were excited because it was a big deal or was going to get them into accelerators. But it's like, when you really kind of like peel back the onion of the deal, it's like, we probably should have pulled the chute on this deal, 2 months ago, right? I think we kept it alive versus like challenging it. But I think we saw a lot of that behavior this year just because deals weren't as easy to come by. But on the flip side of that, the deals that did come in and that were in, like, close rates were much higher than they have been in the past. Yes, you have less deals in the pipeline, but if you're in the right deals and you have the right buyers and you're, whatever you want to say, above the power line or whatever, like actually working them and multi-threading them, that's where you're going to have success. Because one of the big changes I think we're going to see, we saw a lot in 2023, and I think it will carry over to 2024 as well, is if you were typically able to sell your product by talking to one or two people, I would say probably double that in 2024. Like, CFO is going to have to get involved. Somebody's boss else is going to have to get involved. I don't think people are going to have the freedom of budgets they had previously. And not that they won't go spend the money. I just think they're going to be more thoughtful about where they spend it, because as companies look to be efficient, look to be profitable, look to have a good EBITDA, so when they do go want to raise money or get debt funding and things like that, they get the rates that they want. And I think that's the big shift that we see, because I remember, 10 years ago working for Salesforce and some of the early startups where T&E budgets didn't matter. Like, you traveled and you took people out to big restaurants, and like, it was just log it, go through there. There wasn't like limits on days and things like that. But that's because back then they weren't focused on profitability. We were getting so much money that it's like, as long as the revenue number was going up, we didn't care about the burn number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, those days are gone. I don't know if they'll come back in the next 4 or 5 years at the very least, right? We're in the cycle of similar, it seems like contrary to like consumer spending, similar to a recession behavior, cost cutting. So very hard to, just assume, my 2 cents, I tell my reps, like, assume the CFO is going to review this. You're really selling to the CFO. Make sure it's super compelling to them. On what you're really selling to the champion is, who's advocating the deal and blah, 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 is how much money this is going to make them, right? If they're spending money. If you can't prove that, then you probably are not going to win the deal at the end. Anyways, what can people do? So you've been in sales for, over a decade. Maybe one way to phrase this is, if you go back in time, what would be some lessons or things you wish you knew early on in your career to maybe help you accelerate in your career?
Yeah, this is a good question. I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day. It's different now because like social media and everything has changed a lot of this stuff. I think in today's world, if I started today, I would lean into communities huge, because I think talking to people that have been there or been in the job that you want to do, like everybody had a mentor, right? But like now you can join a community and have 20 mentors, right? Get different thoughts on it, get different opinions on, hey, I want to go into sales leadership, why, things like that. Or, hey, I'm doing this strategy. That's how I would do it today. I think before we had that kind of stuff prior, I don't think I've really leaned into like leveraging the network as well as I could. I think a lot of reps try to do it on their own. And because like they feel like if they get help, then people are going to be like, oh, well, you didn't do this on your own, so why should you be promoted? I think more so than ever, like selling is a team sport. I think we're finally seeing in organizations that selling and revenue responsibility is crossing more departments than it ever has. Product and engineering are much more involved in like, hey, what we're doing is going to drive revenue, right? Like we've seen marketing go from really focus on MQLs to SQLs. And so I think for me and just to people younger in the generation, like work cross-functionally. Like I think sometimes you get in such a silo of sales of like, I just got to get to my number quarter over quarter, year over year, like meet with marketing, meet with product, share your feedback. And I think that will make you a more well-rounded person so that you can have better conversations when you're on the phone. Because to your point a little bit earlier, like the days are gone of people just like having crazy T&E budgets and things like that. But I also think these days of like these massive 50-person sales teams where only 60% of them hit is gone, because anybody that's been part of a smaller team where most, if not all of the people are hitting quota every quarter, like that team just sails because everybody's supporting everybody at that point. There isn't this like, well, I'm at 60%, so I don't have time for, rep 1 or rep 2 because I'm behind on my number. If everybody's doing well, it becomes much more collaborative. People split deals. They're not so sharky about everything. So I think that's where the industry is going. But ultimately, it's like you really need to work a lot more cross-functionally. And I think early in my sales career, that just wasn't encouraged, right? We were so siloed and it was all about just drive revenue. But I don't think we were like really lean into how we can be successful partnering with marketing, how we can be successful partnering with product and engineering. And I think the thing I love about it is we're seeing that change very quickly in a lot, especially in the startup world of everybody's one team. And I think that's going to be really successful moving forward.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said from working well with marketing and CS, those two departments alone, because CS is going to be the reason they stay, the customers stay to keep your revenue. And two, marketing's probably already done something, learned something, said something to the customer that's worked. If you knew that information today, it might help you close that deal. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining. Where can people go to follow along your journey?
Yeah, best thing to do is follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always available. I love taking calls with people, trying to help out where I can. I've had the pleasure and I guess the luck of having great people in my life that are always willing to help me. So I'm always trying to pay it forward. So LinkedIn is definitely the best place to hit me up.
Love it. Thanks, Jeff.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.